My grandmother's house always felt strange, but there was one locked room upstairs that terrified all of us. We were told never to go near it. The night I finally opened that door, I understood why. I was 8 years old the first time I visited my grandmother's house deep in the countryside. The road that led there was narrow and cracked, swallowed by trees that leaned in like eavesdroppers, whispering secrets to each other as our car rolled past. Grandma's house stood at the end of that road, an old two-story structure that looked more like a shadow than a home. The paint had peeled off long ago, and the windows seemed to watch every visitor with quiet suspicion. My parents always said she preferred isolation, that after Grandpa died, she didn't like to see people much. Still, when she opened the door for us, she smiled, though her eyes looked like they hadn't done that in years. Inside, the air was thick with the smell of old books, dust, and something faintly sweet, like rotten apples. The wooden floor creaked under every step, and even as a kid, I could feel that the house was alive in some strange way. It sighed when the wind blew. It groaned when night came. And though Grandma was kind, there was one thing she made absolutely clear from the very first day. We were never to open the door at the end of the upstairs hallway. That room was off limits. "It's dangerous," she said firmly, her wrinkled hand tightening around her cane. "That room is not for you." When I asked what was inside, she only replied, "Memories that should stay asleep." I remember how my parents looked at each other then, uneasy, like they knew something but didn't want to say it. That night, as I lay in the guest bedroom across from the forbidden door, I swore I heard something moving behind it, a soft dragging sound, like fabric brushing against wood. Maybe it was the wind, I told myself, but the sound came again, slow, deliberate, and unmistakably human. When I asked Grandma about it the next morning, she said it was the house settling. I didn't believe her, but her tone made it clear not to ask again. As days passed, the house grew stranger. The clocks ticked a little too loudly, the shadows in the corners seemed to breathe, and every time I looked at that closed door, I felt it looking back. Sometimes I'd wake in the middle of the night to see light, faint, flickering like candlelight, seeping through the crack under the door. Once, I thought I heard a woman humming on the other side, soft and mournful, like a lullaby half remembered. I wanted to tell my parents, but whenever I tried, the words stuck in my throat. Something about that room wasn't just forbidden, it was waiting. And even though Grandma had said to leave it alone, I couldn't stop thinking about what might be behind it. The curiosity ate at me like rust on metal. Every time I passed that door, I felt its pull, a silent whisper calling me closer. Grandma never let it out of her sight. Even though she moved slowly with her cane, she always seemed to appear whenever I lingered near the top of the stairs. "Don't," she'd warn, her voice low but sharp. "Some things in this house remember too much." That sentence stuck with me. What did she mean by remember too much? I didn't dare ask, but the thought made my stomach twist every night as I tried to fall asleep in the room across the hall. On the fourth day, something strange happened. I was playing with my toy cars on the floor when I heard the faint click of a lock turning. My head snapped up. The sound came from that forbidden door. I froze, my heart hammering. Slowly, the doorknob turned, just slightly, and then stopped. I waited, but nothing else happened. Gathering every ounce of courage, I tiptoed to the hallway. The door stood as it always had, shut tight. But I knew what I'd heard. Later that evening, as my parents sat talking with Grandma in the living room, I overheard fragments of their conversation. "She shouldn't stay here alone anymore," my mother whispered. "Not after what happened to him." My father's voice came next, low and serious. "We don't talk about that here. You know the rules." Then Grandma's cane tapped once against the floor. "He's still in there," she said softly. The room fell silent. That night I couldn't sleep. My grandmother's words echoed through my mind like a riddle. "He's still in there." Who was he? My grandfather? I'd never met him. He died before I was born. But the idea that something of him was still in that room chilled me to the bone. At around midnight, I heard the sound again, the dragging noise behind the door. Only this time it was followed by a faint knock. 3 slow, hollow knocks. I pulled the blanket over my head, holding my breath. The house was silent except for the ticking clock downstairs, and then another knock, softer this time, like whoever or whatever was inside was losing strength. Then came the whisper. It was low and broken, like wind moving through dry leaves. "Let me out!" I wanted to scream, but no sound came. My throat was dry, my heart thudding against my ribs. When I finally looked, there was nothing. Just the same dark hallway, the same closed door, and the faint smell of something burnt drifting through the air. I tried to tell myself it was a dream, but deep down, I knew the voice was real. And worse, I was starting to think it knew my name. The next morning, Grandma was different. Her usual calm silence had turned into something tense, alert. She kept glancing at the stairs, her wrinkled fingers trembling as she stirred her tea. When I asked if she was all right, she just muttered, "The house remembers," and wouldn't meet my eyes. My parents didn't notice. Dad was busy fixing the car outside, and Mom was packing boxes in the kitchen. But I saw the way Grandma's hands shook, how she flinched whenever the floorboards creaked upstairs. It was as if she knew the room had started waking up. By noon, I couldn't stop myself from sneaking to the top of the staircase. The house was so quiet that the sound of my heartbeat filled my ears. The forbidden door looked the same, closed, old, harmless, but something felt wrong. The air around it seemed heavier, colder. I reached out, and as my fingers brushed the doorknob, a jolt of icy air rushed over my hand, making me pull back instantly. My breath came out in white puffs, even though it was a warm afternoon. Then, from the other side of the door, I heard a whisper, "Please, it's cold." I stumbled back, terrified, and ran downstairs. Grandma was waiting in the hallway, her eyes wide, her cane raised like she already knew what I'd done. "You heard it, didn't you?" she said, her voice trembling. "It's him. He always comes back when someone listens." I wanted to ask who he was, but she grabbed my arm tightly. "Don't answer the voice, no matter what it says. Promise me." Her grip was so strong it hurt. I nodded, too afraid to speak. That night, the knocking came again. This time louder, sharper, more desperate. My parents were asleep, but I lay frozen in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening. Then came the whisper again. Clearer now, closer. "You can help me. You look like her." My stomach twisted. Who did I look like? Slowly, I got out of bed and crept to the door of my room. The hallway was dark, the air thick. The forbidden door stood slightly open now, just an inch, but enough for a faint light to glow from inside, pulsing softly like a heartbeat. I don't know why I did it. Maybe it was curiosity, or maybe it was something else. Something pulling me forward. I took one step, then another. As I got closer, I could hear the whisper more clearly, like someone speaking right beside my ear. "She left me here. Don't leave me too." My fingers brushed the door again, and I felt warmth this time, not cold. A human warmth. That's when I realized there were fingerprints. Fresh ones, on the inside edge of the door, pressed into the old dust. Someone or something had been touching it from the other side. The next morning, the door was shut again, locked tight, but the fingerprints were still there. Faint smudges, like someone had pressed their hand against the wood all night. When I pointed them out to my grandmother, her face went pale. She didn't speak for a long time. Then she said quietly, "You shouldn't have gone near it. Now he knows you're listening." Her words made no sense, but the fear in her voice was real. She took an old brass key from around her neck, one I'd seen her wear for years, and clutched it in her fist like a weapon. "If it calls you again," she whispered, "you run. Do you understand? You run." That night, I tried to sleep, but my mind wouldn't rest. The whispers came earlier this time, before midnight. I covered my ears with the pillow, humming to block out the sound. But between each hum, I could still hear it. "Let me see you, please." It was pleading now, softer than before, like it was in pain. I sat up, trembling. The light under the door was there again, flickering like candlelight. And then I saw something new. A shadow. A faint, long shadow that stretched out from under the door and touched the edge of my bed. I screamed. My parents rushed in, half asleep. demanding to know what was wrong. I pointed at the hallway, but when they looked, there was nothing. The light, the shadow gone. My mother tried to calm me down, saying it was just a bad dream, but Grandma stood in the doorway, staring at the floor, her lips moving silently as if she were praying. The next day, my parents decided we would leave early. "It's not good for her," Mom said, glancing toward me. "This house is too much." Grandma didn't argue. She just sat by the window, clutching that brass key. Before we left, she called me over. "You have to promise me something," she said, her voice weak. "Don't come back here after I'm gone. Promise me you'll stay away." I nodded, even though I didn't understand why. She smiled sadly, pressed the key into my hand, and closed her fingers around mine. "If you ever hear him again," she said, "lock the door, not open it." I didn't know what she meant. That night, we left for home. The drive was silent, but as we turned down the narrow road away from Grandma's house, I looked back one last time. In the upstairs window, the window of that forbidden room, I saw something move. A figure standing perfectly still, watching us go. It wasn't my grandmother, and it was smiling. 2 months later, Grandma died. It was sudden, a heart attack, they said. My parents took it hard, but I couldn't shake the feeling that she had known it was coming. Her last words to me, about the door and the key, echoed in my head every night. When the funeral ended, Mom mentioned that Grandma's house would soon be cleared and sold. She didn't want to go back, and Dad agreed. But I couldn't stop thinking about that place. About the voice, the shadow, and that last glimpse in the window. It felt unfinished, like something was waiting for me to return. 3 days later, I found the brass key. I had forgotten it in my backpack since that night we left. The moment I held it, I felt a strange warmth, like the key had been resting in someone's hand just moments ago. That night, I dreamt of Grandma's house again. Only this time, I wasn't outside. I was standing in the hallway in front of that door. The knob was turning slowly, and from behind it came the same whisper, the same broken plea. "Don't leave me again." I woke up drenched in sweat, the key clutched tight in my palm. I tried to ignore it, but the dreams kept coming. Every night, the same hallway, the same voice. Only now, I could see a faint shape behind the door. A man, tall and thin, with hollow eyes and a crooked smile. Sometimes he would whisper my name. Other times he would just stand there, watching, waiting. I stopped sleeping after that. A week later, I made the worst decision of my life. I went back. The house looked exactly as we'd left it. Silent, sagging, half swallowed by trees. But the air was different, heavy and cold even in the afternoon sun. The moment I stepped inside, the floorboards groaned like they were warning me to leave. Dust floated through the stale air, and the faint smell of rotten apples still lingered. I called out for Grandma, even though I knew she was gone. Upstairs, the hallway was darker than I remembered. The forbidden door stood at the end, covered in cobwebs, but as I got closer, I noticed the doorknob moving slightly, back and forth, like someone breathing on the other side. My hand trembled as I pulled out the brass key. For a second, I thought I heard Grandma's voice in my head, whispering, "Don't open it." But curiosity, fear, and something I couldn't name pushed me forward. I slid the key into the lock, turned easily, too easily. As the latch clicked open, the air shifted. A low groan, like the house exhaled for the first time in years. The smell of decay hit me, thick and choking. The door creaked open an inch, then another. And that's when I heard it. A voice behind me, soft and familiar. "I told you not to come back." I froze. The voice was unmistakable. It was Grandma's. But when I turned around, the hallway was empty. The air felt thick, pressing against my chest. My legs wanted to run, but something stronger held me there, urging me to look inside the room. The door now stood half open, the darkness beyond it breathing like a living thing. I stepped closer, my flashlight trembling in my hand. The beam cut through the dust, revealing old furniture draped in sheets, a cracked mirror leaning against the wall, and a single rocking chair in the center, swaying back and forth even though the air was still. The walls were covered in something I first thought was wallpaper, But when I looked closer, I realized it wasn't paper at all. It was old photographs, hundreds of them, faces I didn't recognize, men, women, children, all taped and pinned in a chaotic pattern. But one face made my blood run cold. My grandfather. He was in several of them, standing beside Grandma, always smiling. Yet in the most recent ones, he looked different. His smile stretched too wide, his eyes too dark. In the last photograph, he was alone, sitting in that same rocking chair, his hand reaching toward the camera. That's when the whisper came again, this time from the chair. "You came back." The sound was cracked, almost human but not quite. The chair stopped moving, and I felt a wave of cold air sweep across the room. My flashlight flickered. I could see the faint outline of a man's figure sitting in the chair now, his head tilted, watching me. My throat went dry. "Grandpa!" The word slipped out before I could stop it. A sound escaped his throat, a rattling breath mixed with a low chuckle. "She locked me away," the voice rasped. "Said I was sick, said I needed to rest. But she didn't understand. I couldn't leave." The figure began to rise from the chair, slow and jerky, like his bones remembered movement only faintly. I stepped back, my hand fumbling for the door. But when I tried to pull it open, it wouldn't move. Something was holding it shut from the other side, or maybe from this side. The figure took another step forward. Its skin was gray, its mouth too wide, and its eyes empty, but aware. "You look like her," it said softly. "Just like her when she left me here." I screamed and slammed the door behind me, locking it with the brass key. A deep thud shook the wood as something hit it from the inside. Again and again, the walls groaned, dust falling from the ceiling. I ran down the stairs, the key still in my shaking hand, as the sound of fists or bones pounded behind me. Then, just as suddenly, everything went silent. When I looked back up the stairs, the door was open again. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The house was utterly silent. No creaks, no whispers, not even the sound of wind through the trees outside. The open door at the top of the stairs loomed like a wound in the dark, bleeding cold air into the hallway below. My flashlight had died, but a faint glow flickered from the room, dim and sickly, like firelight seen through fog. I should have run. Every part of me screamed to get out. But something, a presence, a pull, made me climb those stairs again, one trembling step at a time. When I reached the top, I saw the rocking chair again, still swaying, though no one sat in it now. The photographs on the walls were fluttering softly, like they were breathing. And then I saw one new picture among them, fresh, unstained by dust. My own face. My heart stopped. In the photo, I was standing right there, by the door, looking terrified. Behind me, in the picture, a shadow loomed, tall, hollow-eyed, grinning. The light flickered once, and the air grew heavier, thicker. I turned toward the sound of slow footsteps moving across the room. From the darkness emerged that same gray figure, but now it looked different, clearer, more solid. My grandfather's face, or what used to be his face, was stretched with something between pain and hunger. "She kept me here," he said, voice breaking into echoes. "Said she'd set me free one day, but she never did. You can do what she couldn't." He stepped closer, his hand reaching for mine. For a second, I saw something human in his eyes, a flicker of the man he once was. I hesitated. Then Grandma's voice echoed faintly in my mind. "If you ever hear him again, lock the door, not open it." My hand tightened around the brass key. The figure tilted its head, confused, its grin fading. "I'm sorry," I whispered. Then I turned and slammed the door shut with all my strength. The moment the latch clicked, a scream tore through the house. High, furious, and inhuman. The walls shook, the lights burst, and the stench of decay filled the air. I twisted the key, locking it tight, and stumbled backward down the stairs as the screaming faded into low, shuddering sobs. When it finally stopped, the house was silent again. I left without looking back. I don't remember how I got home. My parents found me the next morning, the brass key still in my hand. I told them nothing. We never went back to that house. It was sold, torn down years later, but sometimes, late at night, I swear I can still hear the faint sound of a rocking chair creaking somewhere nearby. And every now and then, I find a photograph, a new one, of me standing in front of that same door.